Hello and welcome to 3DEXPERIENCE Interoperability. We're going to discuss integration and migration with 3DEXPERIENCE and other PLM and ERP, ALM, and other systems that surround it. So a little bit about PROSTEP. Our ownership is at the bottom there. We're about 10% owned by those companies at the bottom and maybe about 15% owned by the company in the bottom right called the PROSTEP IVIP Association. PROSTEP IVIP is our sister company responsible for working groups and collaborating on new standards. And that might be STEP 242 and OpenJT and long-term archiving. But standards that are important to industry and also other IT companies and organizations. We at PROSTEP Inc. are the commercial group that supports those standards through a combination of software and services. We're focused on PLM integration, and that starts at the strategy and definition for that, for new emerging technologies, for collaboration, and for introduction. And we're great at looking at this objectively. We're very vendor neutral and doing analysis between systems. And then also once that has been realized, helping adopt that system through integration and migration and PLM rollout. We also have products for 3D PDF and 3D PDF generation, as well as OpenPDM for doing integration and migration, and OpenDXM Global X, our supplier integration and collaboration portal for doing secure data exchange between engineering environments. So something that makes us strong in the marketplace is our technology partners, and there's more than are on this slide. This enables us to be somewhat vendor neutral, so we can exchange data between PTC products and Dassault products and Siemens products and IBM products and others, and allows us kind of an interesting place in the market where we can sit in the middle and support these partnerships and enable that interoperability. One that we're focusing on today is Dassault Systems. So we've been a long time Dassault technology partner, starting with VPM and CATIA v4 and v5 development, and then now into 3DEXPERIENCE and Innovia integration. And specifically in CAD data exchange for 3DEXPERIENCE, and the newer products supporting CAA2 APIs, but then also in Innovia and 3DEXPERIENCE integration supporting the data exchange interoperability with the Matrix and Innovia and now 3DEXPERIENCE environments. So today we want to talk about integration challenges. We're going to go through a couple high-level business cases for integration and migration, focus on some customer examples, and that kind of is running the gambit of different types of integrations that we can provide. And then the PROSTEP integration and migration tools. So we'll talk about OpenPDM and some Global X as well. So the first thing that I want everybody to think about is that you're integrating and migrating data already. You are moving data from your supplier or your OEM into your environment and out of your environment. You're just doing it manually, right? You're maybe checking it in. You might be moving data from a legacy project that's not already within that environment, from a legacy system that's holding that data, and just checking it in. You're doing these activities whether they're automated or not. And really, integration is increasing your efficiency of how that's accomplished. And you're doing those things every day. And whether or not you're going to make that traceable and contained within your document management system, PLM, ERP, ALM, whatever, is up to you. And also, the second point to this is that in order to enable these new experiences that you want, this digital twin or digital thread and continuity between these different types of environments, you're going to need integration in order to accomplish that. You're not going to have a thread without the data to be mastered within a repository, again, already. Now that repository might be in some single siloed platform like 3DEXPERIENCE, but it could also be across a diverse set of tools, right? And what we're seeing in the platform environment is that there's kind of a land battle going on between the authoring systems at the bottom, where you really want to provide the best set of experiences to your user. And that's the most important thing to all these enterprises, that the authoring tools and the user experience is focused. And that could be within your CAD environment or within software engineering, or systems engineering or requirements management. Typically, we find that the data management behind there, that first layer, is the master location of that data. So if you're using a integration for your CAD into 3DEXPERIENCE, then 3DEXPERIENCE is where you check that in. That's where the master repository is for that. So the platform could be including that data management system, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe there's more than one data management system that's used in your organization. And quite frankly, I've never seen an organization of more than 50 people use only one data management system. And so in order to get these digital master, a digital record, really what I'm calling a confluence of traceable information, you're going to have to be able to either bring the platform down to the data management and the authoring system repository and kind of have that land grab there, or be able to bring the integration together, right? To provide, the systems integration of all those different repositories and the data to make that data traceable. And to provide that digital master and that digital thread throughout the life cycle, to take that baseline of all those systems throughout the product development process. Typically, we find that integration and migration challenges are categorized into four different parts, right? So first is your standalone integration, and this means replication of data, syncing data between systems in an automated and consistent process. The second is linking, which is integrating without replicating the data. So providing a link that's traceable between those different systems. This is popular where you don't want to move data out of a system, so you're using that system long term, so there's no need for migration of data. There's no need to use the data immediately within the other systems. So it could be a model-based systems engineering environment, other types of systems engineering environments, or traceability, that demands the data model doesn't need to change very much, right? Because data models differ between systems. It's not always adaptable. And it's nice for auditability and compliance with regulations. Third part is migration. So that means moving data between an old and a new system. Typically, we put those into two buckets. There's the one-time or big bang migration, which is leaving Friday using the old system, coming in Monday using a new one. Or a coexistence type migration, which is kind of an integration built for the purpose of moving slowly all the users and all the data between those systems. And we'll go into more detail later on that. And then finally, collaboration, and that's syncing data across corporate borders. And so that might be corporate borders, not just on the same system, but doing translations and using different systems because your enterprise and theirs have chosen different tools, right? And so syncing data from your 3DEXPERIENCE to another company's team center, and doing that behind the scenes and having design space and compliance and requirements and all sorts of other types of data synced between there. So going into a little bit of detail about these challenges, there are some some different constraints and different instances where you'd want to see these integrations. We'll jump into a couple of those. Some are traditional. This is one I would say is a traditional one. This is using 3DEXPERIENCE as a TDM. With the introduction of CATIA v6 and the requirement that CATIA v6 uses VPM Central and Innovia and now 3DEXPERIENCE. There seems to be more of adoption in the marketplace for using that as the data repository for CAD data. And that might not be your over-encompassing PLM system, and that might be something else, but using it as a TDM, team data management system, being able to then take those designs and port them to your PLM system. So if you're adopting CATIA v6 and you need to adopt Innovia or 3DEXPERIENCE to use CATIA v6, an integration between there and your PLM system is going to make a lot of sense. Now, it might not need to natively support CAD data. We could talk about derived outputs or using, feature-based derived outputs, which is, something that you're going to need to figure out when adopting CATIA v6. And later on, we'll discuss some of that stuff. Second challenge, PLM integration with ERP, and that might be, taking those engineering bombs and design information and purchasing information and other things that come out of engineering, and being able to synchronize that automatically to your ERP system, and then also coordinating changes, manufacturing and engineering changes between those systems, do process planning, get visibility upstream, from your ERP to your PLM for cost. Being able to show, vendor and supplier collaboration between your ERP and PLM system. This is probably the first integration that most companies go through when adopting a PLM type integration, is that with the ERP. And it's very, very important. We find that these are very canned, I guess. So there's one flavor that you get. Something that we focus on at PROSTEP is being adaptable within that type of integration and very flexible to different types of requirements, and have great tools for that. A new one that's coming up more with integration challenges is integration with software, application lifecycle management systems like Integrity and Rational, requirement systems like doors, simulation data management systems like Sim Manager or TC for Sim, and then also model-based systems engineering systems. So it could be that you want to have true model-based systems engineering, but you're not linking those artifacts of what's changing to your model-based systems engineering environment. And so you might have just written down, oh, this is that software artifact. Well, if you have a link, then you can directly trace it in order to do your validation between these different types of environments. So we're using a new standard in some of these projects called OSLC. Really, it's, I guess maybe not that new, but for us, we've been adopting it and with some success. And there's a lot of compliance already out of the box with ALM systems for it, and really eases the adoption for doing this type of linked data integration approach. MBSE again. So if you're looking for doing model-based systems engineering and an enterprise architect, or now that Dassault has acquired NoMagic, you can do the integration and you can do the data repositories of different systems like Teamcenter or Integrity or Rational, and then link that data so that you actually have the data available within your MBSE environment to get that type of validation that you need. A migration, and so this could either be in what we would call ETL, extract, transfer, and load, or in a transactional coexistence approach. And there's advantages to either, and I think we'll go into that a little bit in the opinion section. But we want to be able to move data strategically from your legacy system to your new system to move all the data that's needed in order to get that system operational, and then go forward from there. And then finally, collaboration. And so this could be with your partners and suppliers, but making sure that you get the right information, the right revision to the supplier so that they could quote it effectively, control who can see it, who can download that information, introduce digital rights management to that, make sure you have the right IP, and so maybe you don't need to give them all the tolerance information. You can give them just a limited set and dumb down the data so they get just what they need to do their job, not put your enterprise at risk for giving too much data out, or giving that availability for too much data. Do that at the right time, as quick as it was released, make it available, and make it accessible so that it makes it easy for them in order to grab the data. And we do this, we have a product, our OpenDXM Global X product, for making sure that that engineering data is processed at that time very quickly. So we'll continue with some business cases and customer examples. Integration migration solves a whole lot of different types of problems. So at the basic level, the manual integration moving to an automated integration ensures that it's available more immediately. You're not waiting on somebody to punch in the stuff. That it's not error prone, where you're always going to have consistency of where the data is going to go. That it's more accurate, and that you're getting more complete information. So data entry doesn't always add all the fields that you might get through an automated entry system, where you're just going to do exactly what's required in order to ensure that the data is available within the other system. You get more than that with the integration. Typically, you're going to get everything that you can effectively bring over. You can get rid of what we call swivel chairing, and that might be entering data within one system from another system. That's the time that's actually used for that data entry, and having engineers replicate data between these two systems, using one keyboard on one side and then another keyboard on another, and swiveling between the two. We find that there's going to be, with the swivel chairing, maybe users that don't need to be using those systems. They might just have a named user license because they're entering data into it, can focus on only using one system. That does eliminate some license costs. And there's also all the other IT overhead that goes along with that. So that user doesn't need to be maintained. He doesn't have to be trained. She doesn't need the knowledge base or the deployment of the software over the whole IT and infrastructure. So there's good savings there. And then really the biggest savings and the speed that comes with the integration is one of those, but the efficiency of the modern practice. So enabling model-based systems engineering, traceability, quick validation, between these different artifacts, compliance, and understanding that you can have the compliance with your regulatory agency that you need. Determining what was shipped versus what was built versus what was prototyped. We find that a lot of companies, and hopefully it's a before we get in there kind of situation, but a lot of companies don't know what they're shipping, don't know what they're prototyping, and that's not just in the mechanical CAD. They're pretty well stabilized there with the PLM environment, but between the software artifacts and requirements, how they've changed throughout the life cycle, right? And then these modern engineering practices like digital twin and digital master, digital thread, they all require some type of engineering integration in order to be efficient and effective. And so to join the 21st century revolution in engineering data management practices, you require these types of integration. And they all come with great business cases for savings, for quality improvements, for traceability, really, really great business cases. These engineering practices, if you haven't been familiar with those, we're really pushing kind of two of them in this case, and that's the model-based enterprise adoption. So moving towards the model being the master with all the information on it, not within the drawing package. And that enables you to do nice things like bring that model information, that 3D information, to the rest of your enterprise, not doing any duplicate work between the drawing and the model, where it might be somewhat tightly coupled. You can eliminate the need for all those different drawing packages and consume it in the way that it's supposed to be consumed, which is the way that it's created. And then in the digital thread, being able to collect this information from all over the place. So that might be from Industry 4.0 and IoT devices, but ALM, PLM, simulation data, all sorts of data traceable back so that you know when there's change or there's advancement in your product lifecycle to be able to know what's being impacted within that environment. So very exciting. I think everyone's pretty thrilled about what type of enhancement that's going to make within the engineering practices and manufacturing practices. So we're going to jump into some customer stories, and this is really to give you a concept of maybe some things that PROSTEP has done, but this also is kind of a good overview of different types of integrations that are going on here. So PROSTEP at Webasto, they're a long-term DSO customer with CATIA, and have been using VPM in the past and now moved to 3DEXPERIENCE. And so this is a TDM they're using their DSO products for, and they use Windchill as their PLM environment, and they're doing that TDM to PLM integration, right? So that means that their design work is done within 3DEXPERIENCE. They're using a CAD converter to create these Creo view files and then populate the design engineering BOM within Windchill, along with all the lightweight visualization from there to enable that nice cross-population of data between those systems. Porsche is a long-term customer of ours in doing secure data exchange. They also run Novia. And what we're doing there with our OpenDXM Global X solution is enabling the suppliers to get the data that they need and then be able to transfer it securely in and out of Novia. And that means that there's a plugin in Porsche within Novia that you can click and say, I want to send this supplier this set of data, and then it will automatically package it, contain it, and then securely be able to transfer it over to the partner. That provides auditability, traceability, and something that's actually unique about Porsche is their stylized guidelines. So they're very interested in user experience style, and that means not just in a Novia application, but within the portal. And we made sure that it was flexible enough so that it met their requirements to be very, very well styled, right? And effective. Yeah. So yeah. Embraer, they're a TDM to PLM to ERP type of integration using our product OpenPDM. So for their E2 platform, they adopted Windchill, and they're moving data from Novia VPM through our integration with OpenPDM to Windchill, also including a translation to Creo View to get those lightweights. And then from Windchill, where they're mastering the design BOM and the manufacturing BOM and support BOM, to SAP to collaborate there for the support and manufacturing BOM exchange. So a lot of different use cases, fairly complex environment, but very good and very seamless. Pretty well thought out and put together. BMW. So also with the BMW Prisma system, we're using a combination of our OpenPDM and OpenDXM Global X to do integration with their supplier network. So that might be secure data exchange to a single supplier or more direct integration between these different companies. So interesting story with the Mini. So BMW tried to create a Mini in the design and costed it out, and it was way too expensive to make it to market based on a BMW internal design. So they outsourced that design, right? And they still held the design, and they wanted to make sure that they were the ones, the final, consumers of that. But that all their design for the Mini came from an external source. And then that external source sourced parts from other places. So there's a PSA motor in a Mini. So really effectively outsourcing the design and outsourcing most of the components of the Mini. Um, this also includes very large structures, so 150% BOM in design data to be exchanged in a very short period of time. And so there's a huge volume of data being exchanged in order to keep all these things up to date with the outsourced design responsibility. JCI, now Adient, they decided to move to Teamcenter and had multiple VPM v4 systems with CATIA v5, with a SIM database and an Agile E6 Eigner Agile database, and a Matrix 1 or a Novia v6 environment where they put all their bill of materials and change information. So all this data came together and was consolidated, and with all the delta calculation into a central Teamcenter environment that's live today. Seneca, so they had about 12 VPM systems that they wanted to consolidate their data together, and did that through an ETL migration. So, whereas the previous Adient was kind of a coexistence where over time they brought data into Teamcenter, this was all right, we're going to just move it all over in one shot. And so they took all the 12 VPM systems, moved that into the transaction database, merged all the data that needed to be combined, and then loaded it in Teamcenter where they're live today. So we have a telecommunications customer that's doing a CATIA v6 and Smart Team integration for doing simulation. So this includes doing the CATIA v6 and 3DEXPERIENCE export for Sim Manager, right? And doing the simulation over within Sim Manager with that design data, and then bringing the results back into 3DEXPERIENCE and combination of Smart Team that's also incorporated in there. So this is a simulation data management integration. So in order to get good traceability and ease the complication, make sure you have the right revision, the right data at the right time available for simulation. We have this integration specifically set up for that type of situation with this customer. And then at ZF, compliance traceability. So They wanted to be able to see what the impact was between different systems. So we have this systems engineering traceability that we've developed there to persist the links across these different systems. So they wanted to ensure that it was auditable and improve their change to see that if there's changes, what impacts that it might have across these different systems at ZF. And so we used our OpenPDM link engine in order to persist those links between those different systems, and that's the Eigner Agile, DOORS requirements, and SAP. And then PSA, CAPSA, this is an interesting one where there's a joint venture. And typically, sometimes you put up a site-to-site integration between these, depending on if they have the same system or not, right? But what we wanted to do, and we have a lot of these types of projects now, is to be able to give just the right data to the joint venture. And so that means not that they're coming in and pulling information out of your system, but that we push the right information up front to give what they're entitled to them in beforehand. So moving from a they're consuming to we're providing type of format. And we have other customers like GKN and others that we're also providing a joint venture integration that really respects access controls. Yeah. So first piece of advice is to utilize CAD-derived outputs. And my experience is that moving native CAD data is sometimes messy, and utilizing a lightweight format that can provide a lot of the functionality besides remodeling is very, very exciting in most of these cases and can solve a lot of problems. So in the case Daimler, the story I've heard with DTNA is that when they're transitioning from CATIA to NX, that translation is 90% done by JT files. And so they didn't have to do a feature-based translation for a lot of that. And then they could also automate some of that feature-based translation. I then had to manually do a feature-based translation in the other cases. But when you can have 90% coverage in an automated lightweight format within that integration, or what they're doing is a coexistence to translate to another CAD format, then you have the power to reuse and do what you need to do with these formats. They're more portable. They're better for consumption within the wider enterprise, and easier to manage through integration. And I think that a focus of where you can utilize a derived output for engineering data is very exciting. Specifically with 3D PDF. And so getting a digital master out there to the extended enterprise in a format that's consumable by everybody who has Adobe Reader on their machines, which is pretty much everybody, allows you to do that very easily. So to continue on that, synchronizing native CAD. If you have an integration that's what I'm talking, the PDM to TDM. So the TDM is the master repository where you check in the CAD data from your CAD application. And then the PLM might be where you're managing change and engineering BOM. You might want to use a native CAD integration in order to get data from one to another for strategic decommissioning purposes. But you should know ahead of time that it's fairly challenging. Now, PROSTEP has great tools for doing this and doing CAD data exchange, CAD connectors for systems to export and import CAD data from all different types of systems. But it is performance intensive. So you have to run through the export process, which sometimes means you got to open it up. and render it, and then save it out, and then open it up again and render it, and then push it in. And so there's some horsepower needed and some bandwidth in order to make that happen. And sometimes it's messy. So it could be that that you have a lot of errors of warnings and flags thrown and dependencies between parts that might not have any other relationship besides a file type of relationship between them. So there's some advanced logic that goes into doing that. A little bit about more standards is we enable hub and spoke integration with standards, but at a cost of complexity. So when you're developing traditional integrations, it's a point-to-point type of integration, I think, besides the PROSTEP ones, really. And if you introduce more than three, you're going to get into a complexity that's not very valuable to your organization, right? And so standards are supposed to minimize that, to enable you to exchange data independent of where the source was between any different system. Now, the downside to that is it has to have such a strong semantic definition that that data can live on its own. It needs to know what it is in very good detail and what that means, right? And that's what I'm saying is a closed world approach. And there's an example of AP 214 right there, PLM Automotive Data Exchange Standard of an item. So that item, is represented by an instance of that data model, right? Which doesn't have, in fact, even an XML definition unless you bolt on the PLM services. There's no true computational model for that information. So, problem with standards, everything needs to be known ahead of time, typically. Now, we're moving to what I'm calling more of an open world approach with OSLC, which means that you can link the data without expressly telling the other system what the data is in the semantic definition, but just requesting that to have the RDF definition when it's available. So that's a little bit more of an improvement, but I think the cost that I'm driving towards here in standards is that you have to rigidly move everything into that data model and then rigidly move everything out and ensure that that integration is correct. And that's a little bit more time consuming and complicated than a point-to-point type of interface. For migration, so we support both ETL and coexistence transactional migration. But really, there's, I think, maybe a benefit to one or the other, depending on the size of your organization, the user base that you see using this more immediately, and a long-term strategy for how long you're going to use the legacy system. So if you are just moving from one PLM or one TDM to another, don't have a lot of back-end integrations, not a whole lot of users, ETL strategy works great because you can test it, repeat the tests, make sure it's perfect, execute that over the weekend. Everybody goes in a new system. You can train everybody very quickly because you don't have a whole lot of those people. And they might not have a whole lot of roles within the system because the complexity is not very good, right? Or not very big. But if you do have a lot of people and you have a large number of roles and applications within the system, and you're not going to be able to train everybody, and if you did switch from the old to the new immediately, your enterprise would grind to a halt because nobody would know how to use the system, then you need something like a long-term strategy for synchronizing that data. And that could be through what we call coexistence. So moving groups of users at a time, maybe a project, maybe a functional role, be able to develop application integrations to those systems over time so that ERP integration that's vital can be developed over time. The issue with this is it takes longer. It's going to be a little bit more effort. Transactionally, you're not going to see all the errors up front, so you have this garbage in, garbage out. And sometimes they'll slow your organization down. So you might, have a lot of users that still want to use the old system, and this is enabling them. Yeah. So, but there's a lot of benefits to it and moving to the new system over time, where you can adapt and make sure that it's right and that it's workable and that everybody understands how to use it. Look for a strategy that works for you. One thing that I like is decommissioning with integration. So this isn't just, old system that does thing A and new system that also does thing A. It could be that you want to move data to a platform like 3DEXPERIENCE. And let's say you're using doors for doing requirements. And then you have 3DEXPERIENCE now that you're going to use Requirements Central and master requirements there. Well, you still have customers that demand that you have doors, and you're going to keep that alive. Well, what you can do though is replicate that information, still use doors as an authoring tool over time, and then push those requirements into 3DEXPERIENCE. And then after a while, once all those requirements are still in 3DEXPERIENCE, and then all the programs that are using doors have kind of migrated over, then you can shut that down, right? Then you have 100% of the data within 3DEXPERIENCE that was within the legacy doors environment, and the ability to interoperate with it. So if you have to deliver to a customer a doors environment, that's great. But you get the benefits of the platform and having that internal traceability. And you can plan a decommissioning of a system by using integration. So moving that data into your platform and being able to utilize it more effectively. A little bit of advice on project planning. So typically with integration and migration projects, we want to use an agile methodology. And that means that you start with something that's fairly simple. You do maybe your EBOM and your parts definition, right, through a first sprint. 2 to 4 weeks, using 3 to 5 integration cases, figure out strategy and requirements, maybe do a workshop at the beginning, figure out your tests and unit and integration tests, and then go through, do the implementation, do the user and integration testing, and deploy it, and then cycle on. Then maybe follow up with changes, or maybe a manufacturing BOM, or some other type of integration. But what my advice would be is to not have one single waterfall set of contract that says I need to get everything done, and I'm going to do that over this year, and here's all the requirements, and now go away, and I want to see it in the next 6 months. You need to be actively engaged, do fast turnover, start with low-hanging fruit and then build upon that. You're going to get more success and more visibility, and you're going to get experience through the team. One thing that PROSTEP does, which is really great, is has a lot of continuity of resources between these projects. So you want to ensure that you have the same person that's worked on this for a long period of time doing the implementation. That knowledge is not easily transferable. So ensure that you have that core team and that they don't flex too much, and you're going to build on that core team and go forward. And I think you'll see success in doing that. And make sure that I want to see in 4 weeks this integration. Great. Okay, let's go and do it, and we'll build on that. Make it small steps that are maintainable and manageable, and build from there. And finally, we'll focus on some integration and migration tools from PROSTEP. Starting with OpenPDM. So OpenPDM is the integration and migration platform from PROSTEP that enables interoperability between these different silos, like between TDM and PLM and ERP and MRP, but then also from others like simulation data management and requirements and other types of data. So we can interoperate with a whole wide-ranging set of systems. You see in the upper left, there's the CATIA 3DEXPERIENCE and V6 connector. We've got specific 3DEXPERIENCE adapters through the XPDM interface for Windchill and Sim Manager and others. We also have simulation data management on the right, ERP systems, a wide-ranging set of connectors for PLM, and then other data formats and interfaces like OSLC. So if you'd like to exchange data between PLM and simulation or requirements or other systems, then we can provide that. The PROSTEP XPDM adapter for CATIA V6 enables you to have a bidirectional interface to export and import data from CATIA V6 to a wide variety of other systems. So we have out-of-the-box connectors for SAP, Windchill, Sim Manager, Team Center, and ANSYS, as well as others, right? So we can utilize those connectors you saw in the previous slide in order to adapt to that type of interoperability. So this enables you to use that CAD data outside, as well as our Novia connector to utilize all the metadata interface between those other systems. So if you want to move in, bombs or requirements or other types of data, you can do that through there. An example, so this might be a Team Center and Novia V6 integration using OpenPDM. It comes in architecture that looks a little bit like this. So in the middle, you've got the OpenPDM base server, and then you put within that base server your customer-specific logic. So that's the process that you want to use for that transaction that moves data between systems. Also, the import and export strategy. That might be, oh, do I update, do I delete, do I insert, do I revise the data that's within these systems, or in the mapping rules, right? So the attributes on this part go to the attributes on this item between those systems. There's no out-of-the-box in the connectors, there's no enhancements needed to these systems, so you don't have to deploy something on the server. It interfaces through the standard APIs that are supported through our partnerships with these companies, and it can give you a lot of flexibility to what you can provide. And typically we support anything that you can soft type and create. So if you have custom attributes and business objects or relationships, we can support those with our connectors. So architecturally, we see that on the bottom there's these systems, and then there's a connector interface. So from that connector interface to the bottom, we have really in the bottom it's through the system API, but it implements the connector interface, right? And then above that, in the middle, we have what we call this federation layer. So everything in the federation layer speaks the same language. It's all the same internally, whereas it might be different within those systems that are connected to it. All the queries and all the data model is all the same within that federation layer. That's also where we put our process automation. So we have a robust queue for doing transaction logic and containing that, so that you can, administer the integration, go through and see KPIs of how many transactions there are, watch them run in real time if you'd like to. And then on the top, web services. So we have a client application for exchanging data with the OpenPDM client. We also integrate well with PLM systems, and we have plugins for all the systems for exchanging data from within the system. Or another workflow engine that could be your PLM workflow, but that could be a separate business process workflow engine that can do these types of transaction logic, and then also interface and get data directly from there, like a engineering data service bus for your enterprise. And these activity manager for monitoring and administering everything in OpenPDM. It can all be done within the admin console. Every piece of configuration there for getting the connectors installed. So an example in Teamcenter 3D Experience integration, just so that we can go through and show this. You might have a trigger that starts within our Teamcenter client. So you click on an item you want to synchronize, you right click on it, you say sync with 3D Experience. An activity, the process logic would start in the background in the federation layer. And that's where you contain all the business process along with the mapping rules. Teamcenter is then exported, so OpenPDM will go into Teamcenter, pull the data out. It'll map it between Teamcenter and 3D Experience, and then OpenPDM will import that to 3D Experience. And finally, you'll see the result of the data being available within the 3D Experience client. So all done behind the scenes. It does not have to be a manual trigger. So typically what we want to do is actually have it all automated, and maybe a release workflow will start the same type of process and be done just behind the scenes immediately after it's done being released. We have a lot of customers with OpenPDM. So like I said, the product's been going back about 15 years. And quite a few more that aren't on this slide as well. And most of these are larger aerospace, automotive, manufacturing industry providers here. Finally, I'd like to say that we're here to help. So we've got hundreds of consultants, global reach. Lots of experience within the integration and migration field and PLM in general. So we are experts in the strategy and definition of these types of systems and are here to help. And thank you for watching this. Hopefully it was, hopefully it provided some good information to you and is beneficial. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or would like to know more. My name is Brian Schouten. I'm the Director of Technical Pre-Sales at PROSTEP Inc., responsible for requirements and project definition. And I have a background in systems integration and migration with PLM. My email is Schouten, SCHOUTEN, @prostep.com. So Schouten@prostep.com.